just because I had this opportunity so early in my career doesn't mean that, I'm an expert by any means, that I know it all. There's still things that I'm learning every single day about, news coverage and doing that. But it was a position that was both challenging and one that I learned a lot from just on the job as well.
All right, welcome to another episode of Broadcast Bulletin, everybody. My name is Jim Stanton.
Hi guys, I'm Jacob Brooks. Thanks so much for listening or watching. Remember our website, if you haven't been there, is broadcastbulletinpodcast.com, and make sure to follow us on Instagram at Broadcast Bulletin, also on TikTok too. So for today's episode, we're going to welcome Bode Brooks to the show. And no, he is not related to me.
Hello, and thanks for staying late with us this Easter Sunday. I'm Bode Brooks in for Gigi. We start tonight with a group of volunteers flying out of Kentucky today, headed to Poland to help Ukrainian refugee relief efforts.
It is bumper-to-bumper traffic and just a sea of headlights right here on Highway 165 just south of I-20. There was an accident involving a Louisiana State Police trooper this evening that happened just a few hours ago. Yeah, Michelle, these lines are still long, even just less than 30 minutes out from the closing of the polling places here in Monroe.
Bode is the state capitol reporter for Fox 56 News, Lexington, Kentucky. Bode has been in the TV business for almost 3 years now, but he's actually worked in broadcasting since the age of 16 when he got his start at the country radio station in his hometown of Summerville, Georgia. From there, he graduated from the University of West Georgia, and while he was attending school, he interned and later got a job at WSB, the one radio station in Atlanta. And during his senior year of college, he was a weekend anchor for them. After he graduated, he started as the morning anchor and later became the main anchor at NBC 10 and Fox 14 News in Monroe, Louisiana. So Bode has been a part of the startup operation for Fox 56, Nexstar's news station in Lexington, when he was hired there in October of 2021. Today, Bode is going to explain what it is like starting up a newscast from scratch, what it is like working as a political reporter, and so much more. Bode, welcome to the show, and congratulations, well, to you and everyone at Fox 56, who I'm sure is going to love watching you for their recent launch.
Yeah, Jacob, appreciate it, and probably couldn't have written that bio better myself. And not only same last name, almost like half of the same first name. My real name is Jake, not Jacob, but Jake. So it's funny how the stars align in that own way, but it's been a terrific experience working at WDKY, and I'm happy to share with you guys any of the questions, any behind-the-scenes stuff of certainly what's been a unique experience in my career, and one that doesn't come along very often.
Okay, so I'm really excited. Let's talk about first when you knew you wanted to get into news. Basically, just the Spark Notes version of when the bug hit you up until today. And also, you originally started in radio, so I'm wondering what got you into TV.
Yeah, certainly. Somerville, Georgia is a very, very small town, and I figured out early on in my life, it was sometime in middle school, I was part of the FFA group at my school, and figured out that I had a talent for public speaking. And so it wasn't very long before I got the attention of our local radio station in town. And that was a place where you kind of wore several hats. In addition to being a DJ, you were also covering the local news. You had the swap shop trading post type program going on at noon. You'd voice spots. You did a little bit of everything. And through that experience, I found, okay, I really enjoy reporting the news, covering the news. I'd go out to the city council meetings and do a little write-up right after. That was always, it was neat to be, on the ground, getting witnesses stuff in real time as it happened. And then, kind of deliver the exciting news, back to your community of something going on. I remember, one of the first stories I covered for the radio station was, this lady who presented about possible filmmaking there in town, and that got a lot of traction. I don't think it ever ended up going anywhere, but still, it's neat to see that interest generated from your community. It was a very small, intimate community that I got a lot of encouragement and people saying, hey, you're really, really good at this, and fast forward a couple of years when I'm graduating from high school, obviously at that point I decided, okay, I want to go into journalism. I ended up getting a mass communications degree from the University of West Georgia with a concentration in convergence journalism. And West Georgia has a terrific mass comm program. So while I was there, I got started with the student radio station at UWG. And I knew I wanted to do something newsy, politically, oriented, but wasn't really sure, what that would be. It eventually came into the form of a radio show called the Power Hour, which was not my own original creation. It was something that had been created several years prior by a man named Jared Yamamoto, who is also a very well-known figure in the Atlanta radio world. I got involved with the college TV station somewhere around my junior year, I want to say. And by the time I graduated, I had gotten a fair bit of experience in both fields. So whenever it was time to, start applying for jobs, pretty much start my name out there, applying for whatever openings I could. Literally, the week that we had off for spring break in March of 2019 was whenever I started applying for jobs. Bam, bam, just one after the other. And I initially, started going for TV jobs. I knew that was something that I was interested in and wanted to become, part of. Saw the opening for the morning anchor job at KTVE. Now, everybody that's watching who has a broadcast career or has been involved in broadcasting in some way knows that coming right out of college to become an anchor is incredibly rare and not something most folks should expect. But I really wanted to be an anchor, and the reason why was because it felt so much, I think the skills that I'd gathered from radio and the skills that I'd gathered from doing TV really blended together well, where I felt like I could deliver this, presence that, could really do the job. And it was something I enjoyed doing. So I was thinking, okay, I might have a shot at a weekend anchor gig at the very least, coming right out. So I set my goals high. Whenever I saw the morning anchor posting, I remember, what the job requirements were. I'm thinking, well, the worst they could say is no. Went ahead and applied for the job and got a call that week. They flew me out to Monroe, and the rest is history there.
You started at WSB Radio when you were in school, but did you hold any internships at all, or you just worked at WSB? Yeah,
so I interned there in the summer of 2018. And so I interned that whole summer, and I was the one radio news intern. And that was also the same summer before the Georgia governor's race. So we were still in the middle of primaries at that time. So in addition to, just covering general news, also get to experience some of the political coverage as well. I remember getting to help out on one of the debates that were held at WSB. That was on a weekend too. I knew it was coming up, and I approached one of the managers that I knew was a part of it. It was like, hey, is there any way I can come in and help out on this? And that was just neat to be a part of. I did that internship, and towards the end of it, they really liked the work that I was doing there. In fact, in the last few weeks of the internship, they actually allowed me to go on air and do full newscasts on WSB, which not many interns prior to me had gotten to do, which was very humbling, but also just, a huge honor itself as well. Because that's just a station that has just so much history. The fact that, your voice went out on those airwaves almost feels like, an achievement on its own. So towards the end of it, the news director, Chris Camp, called me. I remember, the word specifically, he said he appreciates whenever interns, they can bring something to the table, and he felt like I did that. So they offered me a job, and that was to be a weekend anchor for, the next, whenever it was pretty much until I graduated.
So not long after you started at KTVE, you were promoted to the main evening anchor from the main morning anchor. What was that like, getting such a prominent position so quickly after graduating and so quickly after starting at NBC 10?
A mix of emotions. Certainly, you're honored, overwhelmed, humbled, but you have a big challenge in front of you. And also at the same time, you kind of have this weird, it's like, how long do I really want to be here, do this? Because I mean, virtually I could have stayed there as long as I wanted. It was not something I ever expected. I was enjoying my, I kind of had my thing all going on mornings, ran things pretty well, as it was, well-oiled machine, so to speak. When that position opened up, even then, I still didn't even consider that they would ask me to do it. They brought in candidates that, they thought would be a good fit, and, the search continued, and, I didn't really think anything of it until they approached me and asked me how I thought about doing it. Just because I had this opportunity so early in my career doesn't mean that, I'm an expert by any means, that I know it all. There's still things that I'm learning every single day about, news coverage and doing that. But it was a position that was both challenging and one that I learned a lot from just on the job as well, which I mean, you could say about any position. But I grew a lot during it as well, because I was promoted 3 months before the coronavirus pandemic happened. And that was something where the news director would come in at that time, even prior to, it really blowing up like it did in March, in February. I remember we were hitting COVID coverage hard, to the point where I remember even questioning, like, are we doing too much here? And then, well, we all know what happened. And everything certainly changed. And, I was doing newscasts on my own. There was a lot of, growing that I had to do, just kind of hold things down there on my own for evenings. But I think that, all of the response that I got was positive.
You said COVID, that you kind of started doing that right after, not long after you got promoted to the main evening desk position. So what was it like covering COVID so far? And what were some of the challenges you faced covering COVID?
Burnout is a good challenge that I think everybody in news dealt with covering COVID. That's just because before COVID, I remember, there was a time where I was racing to get to a TV to watch news, any news that I could. And I think that, just the overwhelming amount of coverage, from it kind of was a bit draining. You're talking about it every day. You're exposed to it every day. It can be just a lot on the mind itself to be exposed to just so much negativity that it kind of, there was a lot of, personal growth and development I had to go through to sort of manage how much I was exposing myself to that. And, eventually things sort of leveled out where I could, still take in the news and still balance my, responsibilities for work and it not feel like too much. Our station, KTV, is a much smaller TV station. So as an anchor, I never anchored from home or anything like that. But I'd come in and it was a rather solitary experience for the first few months. The only people were people that had to be there in the building. But as we kind of got more adjusted, things kind of slowly started getting back to normal. I would say that one of the more daunting and intimidating things about covering the coronavirus pandemic was you dealt with a lot of hostility with people, because I think everybody was sort of on edge, and so you saw more hostility coming out and just vitriol from people over coverage, regardless if that was really, if those feelings were really genuinely towards you or they were just towards the media. in general, I mean, you're still catching, the negativity from it. Shortly after that, you had the election that, you had people that had some strong feelings on both sides about it. And so, just trying to cover that and dealing with all of the negativity coming in. I remember there was several months that I just had to, kind of put social media away because I just could not keep exposing myself to it and still, go into work every day and be able to focus on doing my work without it just draining me.
So you were in Monroe for a little more than 2 years. Why did you decide, I'm curious, to take the job at Fox 50, and how did that come about? And also, like, what made you decide to leave an established news organization for a startup?
So as I started, looking for different opportunities, this opportunity within the Nexstar, organization came up. And it wasn't the first one that I had applied for. At that point, I'd already started applying for different jobs, but nothing was really a good fit. And so, in contrast to my very first job search in college, which took less than a week, I want to say this one lasted 2 to 3 months. It took a little while, and even after the job was posted for WDKY, or the jobs, because there were several positions that were posted, and I applied for multiple, because, in the posting itself, it already explained what was going on with WDKY. And so being a bit of the broadcast nerd that I am, I just started, doing my own research and started watching clips and trying to figure out what I could internally, just about what was going on at the station. And it became one of those there were a few stations I applied to, I didn't hear anything back, and I just let it go and move on. I wouldn't really try and follow up any further. But this one stuck with me. I don't know what it was. It just kept, it kept me up at night. I was like, I need to, look into it more. And, I'd applied for a position, not heard anything back. My news director reached out, put in a good word for me, sort of waiting. And finally got impatient enough that I emailed the news director at WDKY directly, say, hey, I just want to, see my still in consideration for these positions. I certainly, if you don't feel like I'm a great fit here, I get it, but I'm more interested in just being a part of this, startup itself. So, we got a conversation going, me and Mark Glover, the news director at WDKY. And even though, I had grown so anxious over potentially being passed over for this opportunity, turns out I was the very first hire they made. So I got in early.
So what drew you to political reporting?
I think just a general interest in politics on its own. I mean, just growing up, I was always fascinated with like the presidents, that kind of thing, presidential trivia, getting into Schoolhouse Rock, how a bill becomes law, all that sort of stuff. And, as I've gotten older, that's still just something that I'm just really into. Every election season, I'm watching every single debate. I like to keep up with politics like how most people my age keep up with sports, whereas I have no interest in sports. So this can be, at least, I guess, fill that need for me. It's something that, I feel like I already do naturally, I guess, in a way. So getting paid to do it makes it a little easier. Now, there are some added challenges to it. Not every story every day is going to be, dramatic enough to really sink your teeth into. I mean, covering, while there was a bit of drama around Kentucky's budget here, I mean, trying to package something like a budget is a bit of a challenge sometimes to make that interesting for TV. There was one day I was covering this like infrastructure stuff that I was thinking, okay, how do I make this visually? How am I going to make this sing? So there's that added challenge there, but I enjoy it because I think people that know me know that I, kind of enjoy taking complicated, complex things and trying to take them and make them, digestible, understandable in a way that even if it is a little bit boring, here's the big picture and here's what it means. And just, taking some of that complex political stuff and just kind of bringing it down to ground.
Okay, so walk us through your day-to-day at Fox 56. When are you starting your day? When you're ending it? Just what's a typical day at work like for you? And how many stories are you turning a day?
Most days I'll turn, one main story. I might have a backup VOSOT or something going on. And really, it kind of depends. Every day is a little different from the other. On a general day, I'm coming in around 10:30. And depending on what's going on at the Capitol that day, I mean, sometimes, the thing I'm more interested in covering is happening before 10 or 10:30. So I'll just, that's on me to come in a little bit early, make sure it's covered. Right now we're in the middle of session. So, I'm attending a fair amount of committee meetings, but also just keeping an eye on the legislature itself whenever it meets. Most days I aim to try and have, because right now we only have one early newscast. It's a 6:30. So in addition to going on later than other folks in town, I think the earliest newscast that starts in the Lexington market is 4. Get a little bit more time to get things ready. So, if I have all of my elements together for my story by 3:30 at the latest, I'm still doing pretty good for the day. But if I cover something at like 11, I got plenty of time to really kind of throw some stuff together. Sometimes, what I'll end up covering committee ends up just becoming a VOSOT, which I'm not sure if everybody watching is familiar with, the industry terms of a VOSOT is kind of a shorter 45-second stories, quick anchor read with one soundbite, move on. Sometimes it may change during the day. I mean, certainly this week, there was one day I went to the Capitol and covered this committee meeting over this rural broadband stuff. We ended up VOSOTing it because we had this bad weather coming in and they wanted me to do, focus more on that. So my day could sort of change in that respect too sometimes. One element of this newsroom that we're trying to do that's a bit different from others is we're really trying to hit that digital first model in a true digital first way. So we're encouraged to try and get our digital stuff, the things we're writing for the web on the web well before our package makes airtime, and depending on how our day goes, that's certainly something that is possible. I mean, I've been able to get up stuff hours before the newscast, and that's just kind of a sign of how things are changing in news, so to speak. But it's also nice to sort of see how that process has been implemented here, and it's very streamlined, and I really appreciate how it's been streamlined here. But even nothing we're doing here, no story is going to be held back just for TV. We want to get it out. So almost every day I go live. It's very rare that I do like a look live type deal, unless what I was doing, I came in just incredibly early to the point where it just wouldn't be practical for me to just wait around for a couple hours to go live. And so most of the time I'll go live in Frankfurt for the 6:30 news, and that'll be the last thing I do for my day is go live, present my story, then I hop back in the car and make the 40-minute drive from Frankfurt back to Lexington, pack up my things back at the station and head on home. Usually I'm home by about 8.
Are you running your own live shots?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Pretty much everybody works as an MMJ. We have a morning photog, and as time passes and sort of continue to kind of grow and expand, I expect we'll bring more folks like that on board. But for the time being, I fully MMJ my own stuff. The only time in memory that I've had anybody help me out is I did one live shot. It was sort of driving related, and we did it inside the station sort of parking deck, so it wasn't really going anywhere. So news director Mark kind of helped sort of set up this neat spot where I was being shot like through the windshield. It was like perfectly lit and everything it needed to be for a live shot. And then more recently here with the ice storm, I was paired fellow reporter, and we were just kind of helping each other out in both running each other's live shots in that respect. But for the most part, I am MJ fully.
Okay. And do you feel like, I know you probably heard about that reporter who got hit by the car. Do you feel like there's a safety risk with doing that?
Yeah, I do. I think something that's important with this job is, just being aware of your surroundings, and certainly everywhere I go, that is something that's in the back of my mind, just to be aware of who's around you at whatever time. There's been a few times, if you ever see of my live shots from the Capitol, I go to an overlook. It's a scenic overlook right off sort of a semi-busy road. I'm super busy. Every now and then I'll get up there and there's somebody else in a parked car, and I don't know what they're doing there. And I'm certain they're minding their own business and doing whatever, but there's always that possibility. Could be somebody who's not that friendly. While we were out covering the snow this past week, we were just right off from a gas station. So there was somebody who pulled up beside us and hopped out, and they just ranted a bit about political stuff, and you're just like, all right, thank you, appreciate your input, and you just try and treat them like whatever, or treat them respectfully. No, thankfully for me, I've not had any situations where I felt like my safety was compromised, but that's certainly something that we're always self-aware of. I think in this newsroom, the management here has sort of prioritized, hey, because everybody's sort of on their own, we are going to be mindful of your safety. If you don't feel safe, communicate that with us. And we've only been going for a month. We've not had any sort of situations where that has been a problem, but yeah, always something that's sort of in the back of your mind.
Let's talk about what your experience has been like at Fox 56 so far, and what's it like working for a startup operation? Do you feel like because you're the new ones on the block that viewers or officials, maybe they don't take you guys as seriously as the other stations in town?
I don't think so. And I think we have the added benefit of sort of having an established identity here. It's weird because the existing on-air product before January 1, I've not really seen that kind of setup before in any other market. And for those watching who may not have been aware, PBS affiliate that's owned by Gray Television, WKYT, for many years, I think maybe even prior to Gray ownership, I'm not sure, they have produced WDKY's 10 o'clock news and their morning news whenever that was added. I'm not sure when. That relationship, that agreement has existed since pretty much the Fox 56 News' inception, back in the mid-90s. In that, I mean, sort of the same sort of, like, I guess operationally speaking, things at WKYT kind of worked like any duopoly would, but it was just different because both stations, both signals were owned by two completely separate entities. I'm not sure who it was prior to Sinclair, but then Sinclair for a little while, and then Nexstar bought the station in 2020. They looked at things, they say, hey, we want to do things in-house. So they started laying the groundwork to start building that new newsroom. So because we had that sort of a step brand or identity, it wasn't as hard to sort of, put, footing down. In addition, some of the people we have working behind the scenes have been, great at sort of establishing that as well. Miranda Combs, our assistant news director, she is a legend in this market as far as reporting goes. So for virtually any story I've done, she knows somebody to talk to. Also, whenever I got here, most any station, depending, there are some stations where you can go on air your first day. There's some stations that will give you a grace period, maybe like a week or so to train, or maybe a few days. I think at KTVE, I think I had 3 days worth of training before I went on air. Here, we weren't on air for 3 months. So that was a full 3 months of time that we had to start kind of getting connected. And so almost every day for about 3 months, the news team or a good portion of us were out networking with all sorts of different folks in the community, whether it be, people, your officials like police, or your organizations like, tourism, travel folks, that kind of thing, in several different communities all around here, sort of kind of explaining what's going on, but also just introducing ourselves, putting our faces out there, and sort of making ourselves known. For me, certainly, I was trying to connect with lawmakers, meet with them, explain what was going on, but also just sort of take a temperature on Kentucky politics. Covering politics, it's sort of helpful to have kind of a background info of what's going on, and that takes a bit of time to sort of develop and understand, get a grasp on what are the real issues here. And if every station I worked at, could have that experience, I think you would see some very you're seeing well-rounded reporting, like regardless at many different stations, but just right out of the gate, I think it's nice to start off with this very healthy knowledge and understanding of the market, which you wouldn't normally have in your first few weeks on air.
So as covers political issues, obviously that's your job. Have you experienced any pushback from people in your area, whether it be from politicians or viewers to the media? And why do you think that is the case? And also, what is your message to people who accuse the media, and particularly local news, of being biased?
Pushback, I would say I've not gotten, pushback, so to speak. I mean, certainly there are some stories that are easier to cover than others, some stories that are easier to get folks to talk to you about than others. You meet folks out on the street and you tell them what they do. There is this initial sort of assumption about what political reporters are, and I'm not going to disagree with the generalized view that there are some reporters that kind of have a bit of a biased skew on politics, but you're seeing that a lot more on a more national network side.
In this news climate, have viewers accused your reports of being biased? And then also, what steps do you take as a journalist to ensure they are not biased?
There are some people that I remember there was somebody who directly messaged me, and it was about the Aunt Jemima. Whenever that change happened, whenever they changed the logo or whatnot, somebody emailed me with this long thing about how it was actually supposed to be this X, Y, and Z and whatnot. I'm like, listen, I don't have an opinion on this. Also, if you watch the newscast, this was not a story I chose to include today. We just focused solely on local issues, and so sometimes I think some of the criticisms come from a place of somebody just is trying to find a target to let their frustrations out on. And unfortunately, sometimes that target ends up being a local journalist versus, you have such a deep pool of so many different options in news now, and social media is really not helping things either. I mean, we can go down the rabbit hole of algorithms and things, but, people get fired up, emotional, react to whatever sort of news story, and they want to take it out on whoever.
Okay, so what's next for you? We know you just started at Fox, but do you see yourself leaving for maybe something bigger down the line? And what's the ultimate career goal for you?
That's a great question, because you don't want to start thinking too much about what the next step's going to be whenever you've only just started your next opportunity. Certainly I've been asking myself, okay, I'm here now. How long do I want to stay here? And I'm not, sure yet how long I'll stay here. I imagine it'll be a good little while unless I have a good reason, not to. But, there's no reason for me to not stay here for a good little bit, because I really do like the city of Lexington. I really enjoy this area. And I want to get to, experience it, understand it a little bit more than just kind of get to know it better than I did Monroe. And I felt like I got to know Monroe and Louisiana's issues very well. But if I want to truly make someone like home, I feel like, having a more intimate relationship of just how things work and get to really just slow down, get to really experience it is important. If I, go through this and I don't renew, which I haven't, decided whether or not, that'll happen yet. That's, a good ways down the road. I'd certainly like to still at least stay in this community for a little bit. I've always thought if other opportunities presenting themselves, like you see many folks that'll end up going into some type of PR type role or a communications director type role. A majority of the people that I'd say I have to communicate with, just covering the Capitol, every single official has their communications person that you have to sort of field things through. And a lot of those people, I'd say a little over half of them, typically have some sort of background or experience working in news. And so that's an experience that I'd be open to, just to sort of have a change of pace. If, for some reason down the line, I look at, what I'm doing now and decide, okay, I want something different. I want to have a change up to, the day-to-day. And certainly if I want to have something that's, when I say stable, a more stable understanding of how my day is going to go, because, ice storm happens and you got to, sort of, your life stops for 2 days so you can kind of deal with that. It can drain you a little bit. I'm in my mid-20s right now. I can snap back from that just fine, but it's not going to be that way forever. So, whenever we kind of reach that point where, those thoughts are really kind of there, we'll make a decision then. But, certainly open to different types of options. Anything where, I can use my voice. I'm a good speaker.
And what advice do you have for those like me who are looking to pursue a career in broadcast journalism?
Well, there's a lot of advice. I mean, certainly if you can take away anything from some of the, stuff that I've talked about here, and there's so many other, breaking news type stories where I could just sort of talk about where, the stress level, the little amount of sleep that you get, all of it isn't worth it if you're not committed to what you're doing and you don't truly love what you do. And you can still love what you do and, hit a burnout point and just kind of decide maybe I need to take a break or whatnot. But ultimately, going into this, knowing how to manage your stress, anxiety, that sort of things that will be important. Going into this field, I was somebody who, went into it 100%, engines going, and it was easy for me kind of, midway through, especially with COVID, as I mentioned before, to kind of hit that burnout point and have to sort of reassess and figure out, how to balance the amount of news I'm exposing myself to, what I'm doing with work. Certainly with the experiences I just shared with covering the ice storm, it's not the first time where I've had to, spend a few nights, purely for work-related purposes. It is a full-on commitment and something you have to be sort of prepared for, which, in college can sound great whenever you're an adult with other, sort of responsibilities. It can kind of hit you a little bit differently. So just know what you're getting yourself into, know what you're signing up for. And when it comes to the storytelling, itself, there's going to be times where you think you got it right. You're going to make mistakes, and you're going to have people who, I've not gotten flack particularly from people who just, oh, you did this wrong before. But, there's been times where I might have gotten, this part of a story, I didn't quite grasp it right. And, somebody contacted me after the fact, like, hey, you need to, correct this. The first time that might happen, it may be a bit of an eye opener, a shock. And certainly when you're working in a field where you're putting yourself out there, the work you're doing, the things you're writing, the packages you're making, that to an extent is an extension of your own sort of your creativity. It's an extension of yourself. If you put that out there and people just dump on it, it can wear you down, and you just have to be prepared for that, how to manage that, and sort of let, especially things that are said on social media, sort of roll off your back. But also, know that, making mistakes are okay as long as you know how to learn from them, and accept the fact that you will make mistakes. That's a big part of it too. I'm a huge perfectionist, and that's, something I work through constantly, every day. But I accept the fact that, mistakes happen sometimes, and as long as you're learning from those mistakes, becoming a much more better, well-rounded journalist, that's all that matters.
What is your favorite color?
Blue.
Where were you born?
Rome, Georgia, but just right up the road from Somerville, because the town is so small it doesn't have a hospital.
All right. How many siblings do you have?
I have 3 younger siblings. 2 of them are step siblings, but I still count them, love them nonetheless. So I'm the eldest of 4 altogether.
All right. Hobbies in your spare time?
I play video games a fair little bit. I'm a huge Doctor Who fan as well. So actually trying to watch all of the classic episodes right now, which is I'm well over a year into doing that. It's quite an endeavor. In addition to that, I like to experiment with cooking every now and then. By experiment doesn't necessarily mean that I'm good at cooking, but it's all fun nonetheless.
Do you have any pets?
I have a dog. His name's Roosevelt. Getting out and just exploring with him because of the weather, it being so cold here in Kentucky. Haven't been able to go out and explore as much, but any park or trail that we can go hang out in is also pretty fun.
Okay, favorite TV show?
Oh, well, I just mentioned I'm a big Doctor Who fan, but that it's hard to settle on a favorite. Certainly that's taking a lot of my watching right now, but whenever The Good Place was still in its original run, I was a huge The Good Place fan. House of Cards during at the height of its popularity, loved House of Cards. Breaking Bad and the spin-offs that have come from it, those have all been great. The Walking Dead, whenever it reached the height of its popularity, was also a huge favorite of mine. And growing up in Georgia, got to check out a lot of the places where it was filmed. I've met some of the cast, that kind of thing. That covers a good number of favorite shows. There's probably some others that I'm failing to mention. But.
Favorite type of music?
Classic rock. Pink Floyd, Elton John. Really into Yes, a little bit more not as mainstream. But any sort of classic rock radio station while I'm out and about, I can just flip that on and I'm happy with whatever they got going on.
Favorite movie?
It's hard to just pick one, so I'm going to say the Back to the Future trilogy, because if you ever watch those, they all kind of just run together on their own, but that's always been my favorite. I'd say a good runner-up to that is Ed Wood. That's more about filmmaking. That you see on the wall was an Ed Wood movie. The movie Ed Wood is a biopic director, and it's just if you like classic Hollywood, anything about cinematography, filmmaking, it's definitely a must-watch.
You have a favorite book?
It's easier to say I have a favorite book series. And it's really more from when I was a kid. If you ever heard of the series of Unfortunate Events books, always loved those books as a kid. Tried to reread them all as an adult, with varying degrees of success.
And finally, what is one thing most people would be surprised to learn about you?
I am far more messy and less organized than probably what I give off, I guess.
So where can our listeners connect with you on social media?
Yeah, I'm on all of your main, your Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You search Bode Brooks, Bode Brooks, Fox 56. Should come up for you. There's not a lot of Bodes out there, so it shouldn't be too hard to find.
All right. Well, Bode, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
All right. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for bearing with me as the sun continues to fight against the camera, but hopefully the audio is a lot more tolerable.
It is. And thank you, the listener, or if you're watching the sun glaring in his window, for joining us for Broadcast Bulletin. We release new episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and others. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please be sure to leave a 5-star review so that more can find us. And on YouTube, we're at Broadcast Bulletin on YouTube, so subscribe there for the latest episodes. BroadcastBulletinPodcast.com is the website. Broadcast Bulletin is our Instagram. That's where we're going to put all the news on the podcast first, so please follow that. We are on TikTok. We haven't done much with it, but we're going to try to do more. That's a goal of ours. And then you'll find out about the show on all those platforms. So for Jacob Brooks, I'm Jim Stanton. See you next time. The views and opinions expressed by the guests in this episode of Broadcast Bulletin are solely theirs. They do not reflect those of their past or present employers, nor those of Broadcast Bulletin or its hosts in any way.
Incredibly professionally. Sorry, the sun is kind of hitting me a bit hard here. I'm trying to adjust the lighting for you guys.